All right. As promised, I am going to talk about Season 2 of True Detective, which I just rewatched. I actually never finished the season when it first came out. You have to understand, and I think I'm not alone here, that when Season 2 of True Detective came out, we were all very, very high on the fumes of Season 1, which was just brilliant, right? So our expectations were very, 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 very high, and mine were, I wasn't like, oh yeah, this is definitely me just as good, because even way back then in 2015 or whatever, sequels are often not as good. But it was an anthology series, so I thought, okay, they're going to do something else that's just as interesting, just as similar. It's something similar. That's what I expected, something similar to Season 1. And at the time, it felt so radically different, and it was hard to follow. And Vince Vaughn, I found very unconvincing in his role as Frank Semyon, the mobster guy. Just seemed a little miscast. Anyways, at the time, I got through about half of it, and then I stopped. I thought I'll come back to it. I'm just not feeling it right now. And then I never did. Season 3 came out. Really enjoyed Season 3. And then nothing for years. Then Season 4 came out. And y'all know how I feel about Season 4, because I've been talking about that for the last few weeks. Let's not even call it True Detective. Let's call it Night Country, or let's call it Untrue Detective. Either way, it's not like the first 3 seasons. And this revelation that it's so unlike the first 3 seasons made me think, well, actually Season 2 is more like Season 1 than I gave it credit for. I'm going to go back. I need to rewatch it. Let's see what it's all about. Now, I'm not going to say that Season 2 is some absolute masterpiece. I don't think it is. I think it has a lot of problems. But going back to it, watching it again, I have to admit it's a lot better than I thought the first time around. So, the reason Season 4 of all the seasons does the most callback, allusioning, blah, blah, blah. It's constantly talking about Season 1 in ways that don't matter at all, right? It's very much the the Star Wars sequels in like, let's do some fun callbacks to the originals that don't actually matter, Let's bring back Palpatine. No, but it's like Season 4 keeps trying to tell us, hey guys, we're True Detective, without actually being True Detective. Whereas Season 2 is like almost the opposite of that, right? It's like, we're not going to do anything the same as Season 1. We're going to do something so radically different that you're not going to be able to tell. But honestly, if you go back and watch it now, and real quick, Season 3, on the other hand, kind of bridges that gap. Like, Season 3 feels a lot like Season 1. There are some connections there, and it just feels more like that first season than Season 2. But Season 2, when you go back and watch it again, you can see how there is a lot in common with Season 1 in the way the dialogue works, right? It's very, the way people speak, it's a little unnatural, right? But in a way that's almost a little poetic too. Like Vaughn's character is always sort of talking in these weird lines. He doesn't talk like your typical mob boss guy, right? Colin Farrell's character, Velcoro, the sort of burnout detective, corrupt cop, he's always, it's a little melodramatic, right? It's a little out there. It's not your typical cop drama. It's not how you would expect people to talk. And so there is that, there is this sort of, the feel of the dialogue is similar, even though the dialogue is not as good. Also, in terms of building, one of the things that I think Season 4 was praised a lot for was its sense of place, this dark Alaskan sense of place. But the more I've thought about that, the more I'm unimpressed with it. Just making a place dark doesn't really equate with really creating a great setting, right? Season 1, of course, has all these bayous and like close down schools and slough, these homes that have kind of almost sloughing into the swamp, and there's this very wet, hot, like sweaty feel to everything, and there's this very strong sense of place, right down to some of the accents, which are deep bayou accents, right? Season 2 manages to create a California, Los Angeles, greater Los Angeles area that has that ominous, dark feeling to it. Like everywhere you go, there's these overhead shots of the city. And the city of LA can be really presented as sort of like, like San Andreas, in GTA. As kind of a lively, colorful place, right? But in season 2 of True Detective, it's very dark. There's that neo-noir thing going for it where it's dark, smoky bars, but even the outside feels sort of robbed of color, desaturated. That combined with the soundtrack, which is really actually fantastic. One of my favorite things of rewatching season 2 is this. It's sort of a funky. It's got a little bit of electronic, but it's got this jazzy, like lounge bar jazzy, old like film noir feel. These horns, and then sometimes it goes straight up into like old school orchestral music. Like there's a whole segment later on in the season where it's like an old movie soundtrack. It's so weird. It's such a weird season. It follows basically 3 detectives and then Vince Vaughn's mob character, who is really the 4th detective. So really 4 detectives. One of them is a criminal, but he's a detective. He's trying to investigate what happened to his life savings, which were robbed from him during this elaborate murder scheme. I'm going to read to you the summary on Wikipedia. I just think it'll be the easiest way to summarize this season quickly. California Highway Patrol Officer Paul Woodrow, Taylor Kitsch, discovers the dead body of a city manager who is involved in a major land deal. Given the ambiguous jurisdictional nature of the crime scene, 2 other officers, Vinci Police Department Detective Raymond Velcoro, Colin Farrell, and Ventura County Sheriff's Office CID Antigone Annie Bezarides, Rachel McAdams, along with Woodrow, are assigned to investigate the murder. The crime soon involves Frank Semyon, Vince Vaughn, a career criminal who is involved in the land deal and whose life savings were stolen when the murder took place. The 3 detectives, plus Semyon, quickly realize a larger conspiracy at play involving the victim's ties to the city of Vinci's deepening corrupt proliferations. Now, that's a pretty interesting idea for a story. And it is an interesting story. The city of Vinci is like, almost nobody lives there, but it has this powerful, wealthy mayor who lives in a totally different city. He lives in Malibu. They have a police department. They have, it's a city sort of built to funnel money. It's like a money laundering. It's like a scam city. It's all just paper. It's all on paper. And they're trying, these rich and powerful, corrupt politicians and whatnot, are trying to buy land along this planned super railway that's going to be really valuable in the future, right? Because they can build all this real estate and commercial real estate and all this stuff. So, and so the conspiracy involves all of that. And then there's this whole backstory with diamond theft, and that involves the murder, and kind of this murder sort of sets everything into motion. And there's going to be I'm going to talk spoilers here, because this is many years old now. Basically, what happens is that several of the main wheelers and dealers of the Vinci political machine used to be police officers who robbed this family that owned a jewelry store and stole very valuable diamonds, killed them, left their children orphaned. The diamonds were their way in to this, the inner circle of this Vinci, essentially crime family. And then, years later, one of them is killed. He's the city manager. He's killed. And the cops start investigating. Now, Velcoro, Colin Farrell's character, he has basically been corrupted because his wife at one point was raped, and Semyon gave him the name of the rapist, and he went and killed that guy. So now he's in Semyon's pocket, and so he's pretty much in the pocket of everyone involved in this whole thing. And he's just a drunk and a fuck up, and he's honestly he's pretty great in this role. A couple times I think he really overacts, but for the most part I think he does a really good job as this cop who goes from being just, barely able to have a conversation without slumping over drunk to being kind of a tragic, heroic figure. It's a great arc, honestly. Bezarides, Rachel McAdams, is like a tough as nails detective, straight up, honest. Comes from her dad is like a self-help guru, runs like this hippy dippy place. Her sister works in the porn industry. She's like going hard, like as rebellion against her father in a way. But we learn that her past has its own tragedy. She was sexually assaulted as a child, went missing for days. One of the fucking loser hippy dippy guys that showed up at her dad's commune basically kidnapped her and raped her as a child. So it's kind of a horrible backstory. And then there's Woodrow, who is played by Taylor Kitsch. He is sort of a loner motorcycle cop. Has a hot girlfriend, but is totally gay. And so he sort of feels, and he's very in the closet. And he's in trouble because he pulled over a famous actress and busted her for driving under the influence, and she sued him and said that he accused him of molesting her, or I don't know. All three of these characters are essentially loners, right? And really so is Semyon. We learn that he's kind of, he's sort of pushed out of his whole scheme, loses everything. And the four of them are effectively four lone wolves who all have to come together and work together to try to solve this case and help bring the bad guys to justice. And unlike season one, although in season one many of the bad guys are not brought to justice, in season two they're really not at all. They're brought together kind of after this big shootout. A lot of them leave their jobs. They leave their police jobs. They go do other stuff. But they're brought back to investigate Vinci and this corruption and work together because, except for Semyon, he's still not really working with them at this point. He doesn't really work with them until the end. But their investigation leads them down, these pretty dark rabbit holes and, that have to deal with the Russian mob and sex trafficking and this whole backstory of the diamond theft. And, it doesn't end well for most of them. Again, this is a spoiler territory. Woodrow is almost trapped and killed, but he shoots his way out and then is shot in the back and killed. At the end, Velcoro has this whole story with losing custody of his son because he's gone so off the deep end that he does really do some crazy shit, like beat up a kid's dad because his son was bullied, because Velcoro's son was bullied. There's always this question: is his son, or is he the rapist's son? It's sort of horrible, just a horrible thing. But he really loves his son, and he really wants to do the best thing for him. He's always sending him recordings that he makes, but he's hunted down by the bad guys at the end in the woods and killed. And he's trying to send that recording off to his son, and it's just heartbreaking because it does not go through. There's no signal. Semyon himself is, after they basically take down the Russians and make off with a bunch of money, he is captured by another gang and stabbed and left to die in the desert. And he, dies. He dies in the desert. Only of all of them, only Antigone, only Rachel McAdams' character gets away. She gets away, is smuggled out of the country by Semyon and his woman, Kelly Riley's character. Okay, the wife. Her name's Jordan. Okay, sorry. So Jordan and sort of the end of the whole show is Jordan and Antigone and Antigone's baby. I guess her and Velcoro hook up, and I guess she has his baby eventually. Kind of like gearing up to go get payback, because the bad guys win in this. They get the the chief bad guys, some of them die, but for the most part, the main conspirators live. They succeed in their plot, and they're going to make a bunch of money. But you get the sense at the very end, it's like ends on a cliffhanger, like they're going to go back and get some revenge. It's a pretty cool ending. I thought the ending, the last few episodes of this season were really, really, really strong. Actually, some good action shootouts. A very tense scene where she goes undercover at this party of all these rich dudes with like she gets drugged up. All the girls there working there are drugged up. They're just like basically they're just sex toys for the rich and powerful men there, and she's pretty badass. Like, you want a badass, strong female character in True Detective, Rachel McAdams' character is that character. She's really, really badass in this series. This apparently like super misogynist. Now everyone's saying it's like a misogynistic, chauvinistic series, whatever. She is a great character with a she's got her troubled backstory, and she's not perfect, and she's a flawed character, but when push comes to shove, like, she holds her own hardcore. Anyways, so this all on paper, this all sounds great. The problem with the show, with the season, is that it's super hard to follow, and it's very convoluted. There needed to be some work done just in the like, let's help viewers follow this stuff in a way that makes sense. Like, it just takes so long to get to even know. I mean, and some of it works really well, some of it doesn't. And so I'm constantly left with mixed feelings as I watch it, like trying to remember all the different names and trying to remember all the different stories. And there's so many characters, and there's so much going on. It's hard to follow, and it just feels convoluted. It's a cool story. It's a really interesting mystery when you peel it all back. And it's a really tragic story, and I love that it ends not on some like high note, like oh, the good guys won, but on a note of like the bad guys won. The good guys and the good guys aren't even always that good, really, but the good guys, still might come back swinging. I don't know. I liked how it ended. I just thought it just stumbles so much getting there. I still think Vince Vaughn is a little miscast here. I liked him more the second time around, and I really think he pulls it off by the end, but it just takes so long for him to get there in a way. Like, his character, it's just, I don't know, Vince Vaughn is just so Vince Vaughn, if that makes sense. I wonder if a different actor might have done that character more justice. I also think that Vaughn and Riley's relationship is sort of done to death. There's way too much time spent with Semyon and Jordan talking about shit, just talking, like, and I'm fine with all these characters having their internal lives explored. Like Velcoro's story with his ex-wife and his son, and that horrible backstory with the rape, Woodrow's closeted homosexuality, Antigone's traumatic past, and her well-meaning but vapid father, and her troubled sister, and Semyon's his crime shit falling apart, and his relationship staying strong. That's all interesting stuff, but it gets bogged down in all of it. Like whereas season 1 flows naturally and they can do a lot with a little. Like, you learn so much about these characters and their conflicts in small bits and pieces. Season 2 gets bogged down, and it gets bogged, and that combination of getting bogged down in all of these relationships and side stories and the convoluted nature of the mystery just makes it a really hard show to follow, even on a second watch. Although, again, I only watched it halfway the first time. If they could have simply tightened that up, taken care of those side stories a little bit, with a little bit more brevity, and given us just a little bit more of that detective work to get us through, to guide us through the mystery itself, I think it could have been great. As it stands, it's much better than I remember it, and it does some things like create a sense of place and tone, create that feel of a neo-noir with the dark industrial city. LA. No other. I've never seen anything else. Even something like LA Confidential, which is a wonderful movie. I've never seen anything else present LA as such an ominous place. And but just the way it's all put together, its structure, it's just a bit of a hot mess, you know. Even like right up at the end when Semyon is effectively ambushed and taken out to the desert and robbed and ultimately killed, I felt like I was a little like, wait, who are these guys again? What's going on here? You know, and I think they just could have done a better job of tightening it up. It just needed to be a tighter story, with a little bit less going on. And I know that's a criticism I have of season 4 also, right? There was way too much going on. At least in season 2, all of it is meaty, you know? It's interesting. It just doesn't, it's just not glued together, pieced together quite properly. So that's my thoughts on season 2. I think it's definitely worth a rewatch if you haven't seen it in a while, or if you didn't love it the first time around. I think it almost needs a rewatch because it's so hard to follow. But I think that for the most part, the performances are great. That soundtrack is just maybe the best of any of the seasons. And while it's not nearly as good as season 1, it is its own unique thing. And I really do think it deserved more appreciation at the time. Of course, it was never going to be able to follow season 1. What a tough act to follow, right? Almost an impossible act to follow. So anyways, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let me know what you thought of season 2 down in the comments. And thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking with me. My little channel keeps growing, and I'm so grateful for that. So thank you. Peace.